Hey, everybody, welcome to the Dream Big podcast. It's so fun to be with you. And we're actually a new podcast dig. So I hope you enjoy it. And I've just going to continue to bring you, my friends, voices in my life that I trust. And then if you haven't been introduced to Jon Gordon, he's a voice that I bet is going to resonate with you. Hey, Jon, welcome to the podcast.
Bob, always great to be with you. You always make me smile.
I'm just so glad we're in the same place. I think we were together in Arizona a little while ago. So when I saw we got to be together on this, I'm like, yes. You have been a voice that, gosh, I think I met you in Pennsylvania. I want to say like 10 years ago or more. You had a tremendous following and a huge impact on people before then. I'd heard about you. Then you get to meet a person. You're like, oh, they're like the way that you were hoping they would be. So thanks for being that guy. You have written so many books. You must write one every Thursday. They're so good. And then they all end up being bestsellers. Tell us about this newest one you had called The One Truth.
Yeah, Bob, this is my 28th book. And The One Truth is all about oneness and separateness, and actually explains when you feel separate, you feel divided, you feel disconnected, you feel separate. And with that comes anxiety, fear, worry, and stress. The root for the Greek word of anxious means to separate and divide. So when you feel anxious, you actually feel separate and divided. And then we have oneness. We are meant to be connected to ourselves, to others, and the creator of the universe. And when you feel connected to God, you feel joy, you feel peace, confidence, and courage and power. And so this book explains what separates us and what can bring us back towards oneness, towards wholeness, towards healing, and how we can go through life like in a high state of mind instead of such a low state of mind. Because when you feel separate, you have this low state of mind. In a high state of mind, you feel encouraged, you feel ready to take on the world. And, Bob, we're meant to go through life living with power. We're meant to take on the challenges and overcome them and make a difference in this world. And I think there's this force that's always trying to divide us and separate us and make us weak. So we don't live our destiny. We don't help others. We don't make a difference. And we don't live what our purpose was made for us.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that listen to the Dream Big podcast. Faith is a big deal for them. I know it is for you. And John 17, it talks about, you kind of get to listen to Jesus talk to his dad. And he said, my prayer for them, that's all of us, that we would be one. And sometimes we confuse oneness with sameness, right? Mm-hmm. And you can be very different. Just meet Sweet Maria and you'll know, like, we could be one, but we could be totally different in how we do. Explain that. What's that dynamic of being one, connected together, but to resist the urge to say, you need to do life the way I need to do life. You need to believe the things that I need to believe. I think you just have such a great perspective on that.
Yeah, well, I learned this from you in many ways, and I also learned it from Jesus. I always say, Bob, you're like Indiana Jones combined with Jesus, and you really share the love of God. And when you are bringing that and living with that, it's not about what the other person believes. It's not about if they're the same as you, even if they're different than you. You just love them, and you have this unconditional love for them. And what does that love bring? That love brings connection. And when there is that connection, there is healing. We heal, relational psychology says, in a loving relationship. Well, guess what? It's a loving relationship. It's not a stranger. There's actually a relationship with you and the other person. Also works the same way with God. Like, it's a personal God. It's a God that loves you, forgives you, and wants to heal you. So we are at our best when we're with people who love us. And in that connection, we find healing and wholeness. Again, as you said, it doesn't mean sameness. We're very different. My wife and I are completely different. Sometimes we look at each other and go, how did we end up together? We're so But there's a love and there's a connection there. And so I don't expect you to believe what I believe. But guess what? This is not about, religion. This book is actually about relationship. And we know that God is a relationship, not a religion. And we know that in our oneness and our connection with God, that's when healing takes place. There's scripture that says nothing could separate you from the love of God. So you're always meant to be connected to that love. It's so funny, Bob. People come to me ever since writing this book, and even beforehand, they're saying, I'm struggling. I got this fear, there's anxiety, stress. And I'll say, I bet you feel really far and disconnected from God. They're like, how'd you know? Like, how'd you pin this down so easily? I'm like, well, if you were connected, you wouldn't be feeling that way. She would be feeling completely different. You'd have this courage, this optimism, this hope. And so everything in life is explained in oneness and separateness. And when you are feeling that way, it's a sign that you are separate and that you need to find your way back towards God, to wholeness and healing.
Yeah, you kind of, if you were a poker player, I know our Baptist friends just checked out, but hang with me here for a second. You would know your tells, right? So if somebody had something really happen, maybe their eye would twitch, or they just, if it was me, it'd be hard to keep a secret. I'd have this big bird eating grin on me. You can know your tells about anxiety as well. You can say, these are the things that tend to trigger or set me off. These are the things I start feeling a little listless. I start waking up, early or late, or it's hard to get out of bed. But know your tells and know what they're pointing to. So you could think of these manifestations of anxiety in your life, that they're usually connected to something. And let's just figure out what they're connected to. And once we figure out what they're connected to, now we got a ball game. Otherwise, you're just ricocheting off all the things. I want to turn your attention for a second to legacy. And I still have plenty of trips around the sun left in me, I think. I'm going to go celebrate the life of a doctor who did some really heroic, crazy, neat things for a little boy, and you'd gone to abducted by a witch doctor, and had some just really difficult things happen. And then this doctor tried to undo all of the bad. He passed in a airplane accident recently. And so we're going to go celebrate his life in a couple of days. And I want to think about oneness and this idea of legacy, that it wouldn't be just like what we're feeling right now, but it's a thing that we leave behind. Talk to us about that. And you're going to be around a lot longer than me, because you're really fit like a fiddle. But talk about legacy and the importance of this idea of having some truths in mind that are going to actually outlast us.
I'm so glad you're saying that, because when you are one and you feel one and you're connected to the one, what happens is you go after the one. You go after the ones who are lost. You go after the ones who are struggling. You see everyone as one with you. Like in traffic, for instance, the reason why you might get mad at someone in traffic is you see them as the cause of your traffic. They see you as the cause of their traffic. What you're realizing is, wow, like that person is separate from me. You're thinking they are. It's an illusion. There's a great billboard in LA that says you are the traffic. And what you realize is we're all one. We're all the traffic. So they're not the cause. We're actually all one. So the minute you realize that someone is not separate from you, you start to care more about that person. You start to help that person. You realize you actually love that person. That person loves you. We're all one spirit united together. Bob, couples that pray together, 99% of couples that pray together stay together. Those who go to church, only 50% stay together. This is from Gallup research. And so it's not the church in the act of going to church. It's the spirit. Your spirit, God is spirit. The other person is spirit. And you're now becoming one spirit. So when you see that person as a spirit and they have a soul and you have a soul, and it's not outward appearances, it's not color, it's not ethnicities, you see that person as one. You want to care about that person and help that person. Mm-hmm. So from a legacy standpoint, this is how I live my life. Like, I know that I want to have a great funeral. And I know that's interesting to say, but I want to have a great funeral. I'm not going to be there, but people will be there. And it will mean that I made a difference, that I made an impact, that I went after the people who needed help, that I took the time. My mission is always to inspire and encourage as many people as possible, one person at a time. And knowing how you want to be remembered helps you decide how to live and lead today. Like, how will I go out and make it and make an impact? And I believe we need to be more intentional with legacy. We often think that we're going to live forever, but we're not. But guess what? We live forever when we leave our legacy in the lives of others. I just spoke to a group of educators today, and I talked about how these teachers like changed my life. Like, I would not be who I am today if it wasn't for those teachers who took the time to listen to me, to love me, to believe in me, to care about me. And because of them, I am who I am today. I am their legacy, and I carry their legacy with me. And guess what? When you decide to go after the one, to help the one, to help those who need help, to help those who need a listening ear or a word of encouragement, guess what? you will be part of their legacy going forward. My mom passed away at 59 years old. So I think about this often. She died over 17 years ago. And guess what? I am her legacy, and she loved me like no other. And now I try to share her love wherever I go. But Bob, why does all this matter? If you really think about it, like we talk about legacy, we talk about making an impact. But if you really think about it, like no one lives forever. And guess what? We're all going to die at some point. And the people we help are going to die. And here's why it matters. Because appearance is temporary, but the soul is eternal. And so essence is eternal. And so that essence that you love with, that you care with, that you serve with, that you impact others with, that essence, that's what lives on. That's what lasts. The appearance doesn't, but the love echoes into eternity. And when you're sharing that love, that's how we make an impact here and then forever throughout the kingdom.
Yeah, I haven't found any scripture to back this thing up, but I have this hunch that whoever we couldn't get along with here on earth, that God's going to make us roommates in heaven. We can argue about who gets the top bunk forever. What I want to do is be really picky about who I'm arguing about. As a trial lawyer, it's all about winning. And about just being right, even when you aren't. Just be like, win, win, win. And for you to win, somebody else has to lose. But is there a way to say, and it isn't just putting a happy face on it, but is there a way to take it down a notch and to say, man, you have legitimate interest in this. I have legitimate interest. I don't get you, but I assume you've got people who love you, who like believe in you. I've got a couple that love me and believe in me. And so somehow that idea of taking an interest in another person, you don't need a Bible verse for everything, but Philippians 2:20, it's Paul talking about Timothy behind his back. He said, I don't have anybody like Timothy. He's a guy who takes a genuine interest in other people's welfare. Man, no better description of this idea of being one than realizing some of your ambitions while you're helping other people achieve their ambitions. So tell us about that. How does that work? Because I know you're a pro at that. I've seen you in countless settings speaking to people about just kind of get out of it, lift your eyes from your stuff and to say, I'm not going to get lost in somebody else's ambitions, but is there a way I can grab my knees, do a cannonball and helping them achieve what they want? And then along the way, I'm going to get more clarity on what I want.
The wild thing about that is when we help others improve, we improve. We help others get better, we get better. There's a guy named Schwen Nader. He was recruited by Jon Gordon to play at UCLA. 6'10", played at Cypress Community College. And Jon Gordon said, hey, Schwen, if you come here, you're not going to play much. We have the best center in the world in Bill Walton. But we want you to make Bill Walton better. So Schwen agrees to go to UCLA. He never plays in games, but he's always battling Bill Walton in practice. That's his job. Make him get better. And so that's what he's doing. Well, guess what? He's the only person in NBA history never to have started a college game. Be drafted in the first round of the NBA. 12-year NBA career, rookie of the year. What happened? He was making Bill Walton get better. He got better. And I found this to be the case with me. There was a moment in my life when my wife really needed me. My kids really needed me. And I was now speaking a lot. My career just finally took off. And here I am on the road. And everything I had worked for, I was now achieving. And my wife said, your kids are struggling. I'm about to have a breakdown. Like, we need you. You're gone all the time. I said, honey, this is everything I've worked towards. She said, we need you at home. So I said, fine. So I remember being upset at first. And I remember thinking, why can't my team get it together? Like, I wanted a different team in that moment. And I remember saying, okay, but I got to serve. I got to help. All right, I'll do it. I was frustrated. By the end of the year, what I realized I didn't need a different team. I needed to become a better leader. And as I began to help my team and I served them and I helped them improve, man, I got so much better as a servant leader. I learned servant leadership that year because I was so focused on me on the road all the time, just speaking. And I was talking positive leadership, but now I learned positive leadership. Bob, every book after that experience, every book has been a bestseller after that experience of learning to help others get better, but you get better. And it's like, we don't do it for that reason, but because we're one and we're all connected. When you are helping someone, guess what? You elevate them and then you elevate yourself at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a byproduct. It's just going to follow. There's going to be a front and backside to every wave. The front side of having a powerful message like you do is that it inspires a lot of people. And you also want to provide for your family, which is just such a beautiful, noble idea. But then there's some of you, and no pointing at yourself if you're listening to this, but to say sometimes what we're providing isn't what our family needs. What they need is us. And I remember pulling into the driveway to a help wanted sign. And sweet Maria, I like she has some sass in her, but she was not saying that she needed help. She was saying I needed help. And it is, we've been married 37 years. And Maria would tell you it's been the best 30 years of her life. There was a period of time where I was so busy trying to provide that I wasn't providing what the family needed. And so good to find a couple honest voices around you. Tell me about that. I've said before, you got room for about 8 people around your bedside on your last day here, and 9 if they're thin. But what would be your advice to how to cultivate a group of people, even in this room are some of the people that I have around me closely to help me stay on. They're not holding me accountable. They're holding me close. They're like saying, Bob, you have said these are your objectives for your family and your grandkids and all this. We can make this happen. Just tell us, like, empower us to say, like, do you want to just go with that program? How have you cultivated that group of people around you?
Well, as someone who works with a lot of leaders and teams, I help build strong teams, whether it's sports or business. It's a big part of what we talk about, that you need to have a team. No one creates success alone. We all need a team to be successful. And we need people who speak truth into our lives, like love and truth. I call it love tough instead of tough love. If people know you love them, you earn the right to challenge them. So you want people in your life that love you, but then you ask them to challenge you, hold you accountable. And you have these incredible, honest conversations on how to get better. But you have to be someone who is willing and open to feedback from others. Because you can have an accountability partner, but if you're going to lie to your wife, you're going to lie to God, you're going to lie to your accountability partner as well. So they're only as good as you are. So you have to be willing to say, all right, I want people around me who make me better, but I'm willing to do the work to get better myself. But yes, having that team is essential. And for me, it's been friends like Dan Britton, who's one of the top leaders in FCA. Dan and I talking and, hey, Dan, I want to be a better dad. What should I do? Him saying, you know what, have a family meeting. Like, get together and have a family meeting once a week. It's been a game changer for us, is what he told me. And guess what? It was a game changer for us. Some call that dinner a family meeting, but some people are so busy with their kids and sports and everything like we were. That family meeting, we came up with a family mission statement. Each family member would pick a word for the year, and we would talk about why we chose the word. And then we talk about the challenges that were happening like during the week. So we learned so much about our kids during that time, which was so helpful, helped them deal with all the issues and the challenges that they were facing. So that was really key. And then Dan was like, my son and I were not really as close, and I'm struggling with my son. He's like, well, what does your son like to do? I said, he likes to fish. He goes, well, do you fish with him? No, I don't fish with him. Well, there you go. John, start fishing with your son. So guess what? I took my son out fishing. So it was moments and conversations like that help you get better. And I'm always saying, how can I improve? How can I grow? But for anyone who wants to have a difficult conversation, we actually have a model that we teach, and it's the STAR 3 model. Small ego, big mission, which is key when you're talking to someone. Small ego, big mission. And there's the T, tell the truth. We need people to tell the truth. There's the A, assume positive intent. Well, guess what? Assume that person has your best interest at heart. And when you know they do, you can trust them. And then there's the R3, that's R cubed. That's relationship. You want people who are here for the long haul. We might disagree, but guess what? Let's maintain our relationship and not lose our relationship over this. Let's have respect for each other, knowing that we're going to have differences of opinions that disagree on. But guess what? We're going to respect. And then there's rules of engagement, which is really key. How we have these difficult conversations. And you create the rules so that, like, for instance, with teams, there's no meeting after the meeting. There's no gossip. You make the rules up front. There's no getting emotionally charged when someone tells you what you may not want to hear. Remember, we got that rule, and that will help you be a stronger team. And that team could be 10 people, 12 people, 20 people. It could be 3 people, but it's great to have those kind of conversations that make you.
Yeah, falls under the category of like fight fair.
Yeah.
one of the things that has been helpful for our family is that we will like curate an event. We have, yeah, it doesn't take a lot. It's just like a couple pizzas. Uh, but I'll invite in somebody, it would be like you or somebody else to just come have dinner with us and talk. If the Enneagram is a thing, then somebody who's really good at it. And um, a, find people who have an expertise in something, curate a little family dinner around it, and to say, hey, they're going to come and share some ideas. You want to become one, have things in common. The disciples, it's Acts 2 and 4, said they broke bread together. So they're pounding the carbs and they had things in common. So they just had more things that they were, I don't think they were swapping pink slips of their chariots. I think what they had is these common experience. So cultivate a couple of those. And then bring your kids along or the people that you love the most. I'm in Nashville in a couple of days. So I just called kid two to say, here's the flights. I got the hotel rooms. Like, do you want to just come along? I don't need a chaperone. I don't need a cupbearer. I just want to have another shared experience. Let's go get some hot wings together. And I found myself in a golf store buying a club. It was a very surreal experience because I am not that guy, even though my last name is Golf. Like I just never thought I'd have an interest, but son 1 and 2 have an interest in golf. I'm like, let's swing away. So find those things. If your kids want to make pizzas, I want you to grow tomatoes. Find things where you can share the experience. And by doing that, you become one. Jon, I know you got so many things going on. You've been super generous, as always, with your time. And pick up this book, you guys. One Truth. And it isn't because Jon needs to peddle books. What he wants to do is make a difference in people's lives. He wants to give you kind of the ideas and the elements for you to succeed in family and faith and community and business. And so, again, a voice that I trust. Brother, thanks a million for being on.
Bob Goff, thanks for showing us how to love.
Hey, you guys, you've been listening to the Dream Big podcast. I hope you got a couple things. Now, here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to agree with Jon. Agreeing, that's brain candy. I want you to go do something about it. If you had a note, if there was something that pinged you from something Jon said, go take it and do something about it, because you'll never find Jesus ever asking anybody to agree with him. He said, like, let's just go do it. And it's not because he needs your help. He wants your heart. You guys, I'll talk to you next week.